Hello and welcome, or welcome back, to the Sales Enablement Festival. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Today is all about our bonus content, as we are sharing some of the very best presentations from the previous Future of Sales Festival. Speakers will not be joining for live Q&A, however you can connect with them in the SEC Slack group. Thanks again to all of our sponsors and to you, our attendees, for bringing this event to life. Enjoy the festival.
Hi everyone, I hope you're well and thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm delighted to be presenting to you on the future of sales, and in particular what I'll be looking at is sales engagement. I'm going to be talking to you about weaving a sales enablement web. Before I jump into the real meat of the topic today, I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of myself and my background. So I work for a tech company based in Sydney, Australia. Obviously, as you can tell, I don't have much of an Australian accent, but we actually have offices all over the globe. And most of our salespeople are not based in Sydney. We have offices in the US, in the UK, Germany, in Singapore. So despite being based in Sydney, from a sales enablement perspective, I spent a lot of my time on the phone. Obviously now, due to COVID, we're all on the phone practically all of the time. My background is in digital marketing, but back in 2018, I decided to move into sales enablement. We didn't have a sales enablement function in the organization, so we had to set it up from scratch. And that's where this journey started. That's what I wanted to take you through, some of the wins that I've had along the way, and I'll also share some things that haven't went so well. At the moment, I'm actually seconded into a project management position, but I'm really looking forward to getting back into sales enablement full time. A few fun facts about myself. I'm the president of Professional Women's Sydney Toastmaster Club. I'm also the co-founder of Wonder People here in IR. And since COVID, I have been doing a lot of painting. The agenda for today's session will be starting off by talking about where I began the journey in sales enablement, which was by listening to our people, gaining that insight from them. Then I want to talk about the first big project I took on, which was building a central place for our sales team to find everything they need. Then I'm going to talk about the quick wins. After that, I'm going to move into the big beasts that we decided to take on. I want to finish our session today by touching on what not to take on, because that is equally as important. Okay, so where it all began. When you think about building sales enablement and building out that web, you have to start somewhere, and you have to start at the center. We had all these ideas about projects that we wanted to tackle and various things that we found were gaps in the organization. But really, when you think about sales enablement, the most important thing is your salespeople. And you really need to foster a strong relationship with them to understand their needs, to understand their frustrations. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, they say jump and you say how high. It's really taking the time to get to know them so that you can manage their expectations, so you can focus your compass in the right direction. And so where you know best as a sales enablement professional, how you can navigate that and understand where they're coming from. So right at the beginning, I decided to spend some time with our people. Over the course of 4 weeks, I talked to about 60 different people across all the regions. I was lucky enough to actually sit down with them face to face. And this was an incredible learning experience. And it was really important because of the 5 or 6 areas that we had plotted out to tackle on, I really got to ask the same questions again and again to uncover whether this was something that would alleviate their problems, and also uncover some other areas that we hadn't considered. There were other benefits to taking this time out and actually interviewing the salespeople from all the regions, and it was at various levels. It wasn't just account managers or SDRs or leaders. It was it was all the various people. And when we took into consideration the various regions, different people wanted different things. You had this kind of whole context behind what was going on. I was able to drill in deeper, because sometimes people say, I want X, Y, and Z. And in actual fact, we found in a lot of instances, we already had that information, but we maybe hadn't went so far as actually translating that or making it easy for people to find, or people are saying that they want this, but they really need that. So that drill down was really fantastic. The other thing that I could have never predicted that would have resulted from taking that first month out to get to know my people was the relationship was amazing thereafter. And it fueled a really strong relationship over the next year and a half. It set the foundation from the get-go that, hey, I'm interested in your opinion, I'm interested in your views, I want to work together. Let's make this function a really important one to you, your needs, and the needs of the wider sales team too. The other aspect to this part of the sales enablement journey was sharing the information. So it was highly valuable going out and finding the information for the sales enablement function, but it was equally as important for the sales leader themselves, because it was like holding a mirror up to them. And also so for some other functions too, saying, well, in actual fact, you might be thinking that this is going great or this is going really well, but here's feedback from the team. And here, once we've distilled it, here's the insight that we've gathered therefore. So when you do go out and get the information and glean this amazing feedback, feed that information back through the other departments in your organization, because a lot of the insights that I gathered was not something that I really could action, but something that other teams were really interested in, that they could go back and over the course of the next 6 and 12 months, actually, some of this feedback was used for other areas of the business. We did things like we hired new people, we changed KPIs, we moved some things around. So the research that you would garner from this doesn't have to be just for the sales enablement part of the organization. Okay, so now you know the starting point is listening to your team. The next thing when you're building out your web is you want to have something that's at the center that's really going to help you throughout your whole time building out all your various aspects to sales enablement. For us and for most people, it's having a central place for everything. So our central place was a sales portal, and that sits at the core of our web. It really ties everything together. It was a great first win right at the beginning, tying everything together, but you couldn't tie it all together unless you have a central place. When deciding about your central place, you really have 3 options. You can decide to build from scratch, you can decide to leverage existing technology, or you can decide to rip and replace. For us, we already had something in place, so we didn't need to build from scratch. So we could either leverage what we had or we could rip and replace. In a lot of instances, the rip and replace option is a great one, and it can be really exciting. For us, we needed to get something in place quite fast in 5 weeks. So we decided to go down the leveraging route. Like many organizations, we use Office 365. Our existing asset library was housed in SharePoint, so we decided to give it a makeover. We got some help from an agency, and they taught me how to use modern SharePoint and really make it more visually appealing. I had some clear goals, but the main one that I always came back to was for every person to find what they need in 2 clicks. Very simple. But it meant that the user experience was the number one priority. We knew that the information was there. We just needed to get it into the fingertips of our sales team. What you can see on the screen is a preview of what you see on the homepage. It's nothing fancy, it's nothing major, it's just simple and easy. We have content divided up into the various areas of our business. And then we have a This Week section, which is kind of like a news section. Everything that's new goes up here every week. There's kind of 3 placeholder items. And then on the right hand side of the slide, you'll see this is further down the homepage. I have content split out into buyer journey stages. I can talk about that in a little bit more detail. Then I have some training videos to the side. We have further what's new, which is previews and 3 most recently updated assets from our asset library. And then we have some other kind of stock standard things that we want on the homepage, like how to use Hyper. Hyper is the name of our sales portal, and the name is High Performance, so we brought together Hyper. As I mentioned, the company's name is IR, so a little bit of a play on that. You can notice down in the other corner as well, you can see Yammer. If anybody's familiar with Yammer, you'll know that it's like a forum board as part of Office 365. This is interesting because throughout Hyper, because it's built on SharePoint, which is a part of Office 365, we were able to tie in the other Office 365 products, if you like. So for the relevant Yammer channels, we brought them into the relevant pages. The videos you'll see, for the videos you see, they're on Microsoft Stream, which is basically Office 365 equivalent of YouTube. Now we're obviously big users of Microsoft Teams, and there are certain elements that we have going on in Teams that we also drag in. So that's the big benefit of leveraging existing tools, is that you can plug and play into what's already there and what other departments are doing. And it's not a big mammoth effort. It's kind of coming in on top, giving a facelift, and all of a sudden gaining a huge amount more value into what's there in an existing way. Another benefit of leveraging is that the learning curve might not be as steep, and you also might get a better adoption rate because the change management isn't as significant. On the left-hand side, you might not be able to make it out because it's quite small, but you'll see there's other different menu items, and there's also a search box up here. So no matter what way our salespeople wanted to search for content, they could find it, adhering to that 2-click rule. So at a glance, you can see this is the center of where we start everything for the sales team. So when we talk about a web, you now know what sits at the center of it. It's our sales portal. When you're building that web, you need for a reason for people to come back again and again and again. One of the ways that we helped our sales team to always bring them back to that central place that actually fitted into one of our quick wins was a regular 2-minute video update. Now, this update was so funny the way it came about because it was really unexpected how popular it would become. As I mentioned at the start, we began the journey by talking and listening to our people. And one of the things that became apparent was that our communication was not fantastic and not where it needed to be. Our teams needed a little bit more support in that area, and they needed support in various different things. So some of them mentioned up here, translating corporate messages. There's a lot of emails that come out from senior management, and what does that really mean for them? There was also a lot of sales assets that came out, and where was the hand holding there into pick out what's most relevant to them individually. There was also, we had product launches, we had how-tos, we had all these different things, but we were missing the hand holding, I guess, if you like. And so one easy thing that we threw out as an idea was, okay, why don't we do a 2-minute update once a week that touches on the various things that are happening in the company and what's important to them. It was going to be very punchy, very informative. It was going to be easy to digest. And, let's just try it out. Not really a big deal. So what have we got to lose? We started doing this, and on the right-hand side, you can see a thumbnail of what these videos look like. Not dissimilar to the format that I'm doing here now. Have my picture in the bottom corner, have a screen share going on, and the narrative reflects what's on screen. I can't believe the success that this has had. It's so funny. Even now that I'm doing project management, the one thing that was required for me to keep on while I'm doing the other role temporarily was to keep these video updates coming through. People love them. They're in their inbox every week. It's so fast, and they just press play and they know everything they need to know. The sales leaders as well love them because it's a good reminder. And what's been fantastic is that every week there's a screen share that showcases where they can find things in Hyper. So it's bringing them back to the central portal again and again and again. It's been great for adoption because somebody asked, where can you find that? Where can you find this? It's on Hyper. It's on Hyper. And every week you're just growing that over time. The other thing that we didn't really consider was that it's been really good for building up that trust. So it wasn't like I met people face to face right at the beginning and then forgot about them and didn't see them for one end of the year to next. Actually, I'm talking to them every week and I'm talking to them all at the one time. It's only 2 minutes and they feel like they know me. This is really helpful for trying to get their buy-in for other areas of the business because, I might only see them like once a year, once every 6 months, but it's always a very warm and welcoming response. So if I need their help with anything, if I need champions, people in the field to really drive something home, if I need their feedback, it's great because this little 2 minutes in their inbox and has been super for engagement. Absolutely super. I couldn't recommend it anymore. Now you've seen one of the quick wins we've had, and I wanted to start to move into the bigger beasts. So these are projects that didn't start on day one. They came up over time. One tip that I would say for anybody trying to set up a sales enablement function is not to try and tackle everything at once. Lay out what you want to tackle at the start and then work on them project by project. If you try to do too much at the start, everything will take really long. So when you can identify your low-hanging fruit, the things where you need to start your central place, probably the quick wins like I've outlined, and then move on to those chunkier projects that need dedicated time. Onboarding at a distance. When you're in a global organization and your sales team are not sitting in your office, you haven't got the luxury of doing onboarding face-to-face all the time. You might have them for a day when they start. In our organization, we had a mixture. Some people, when they get onboarded, can come to an office and get some onboarding face-to-face. Some others might have to wait a month or two, maybe even 3, to get that face-to-face experience. So you need to have everything available for them online. Now with COVID, we know that this is really important as well. For our organization, the onboarding was kind of fragmented, I would say. Different people had different areas that they looked after, and our HR team are fantastic, but often the onboarding was tailored for like anybody and everybody in the company. So it wasn't specific to the sales team. What I found was we had pockets of fantastic information and resources for the sales team, but people had to try and find them. What I did was a simple solution of bringing the best of the resources into one place and making it available to them on day one. Another important part to the onboarding was that on the first day or second day that they arrived, I had a stock standard email that I'd sent them, linking them to Hyper, linking them to the onboarding page, saying X, Y, and Z, these resources are what you need. I'm going to schedule some time with you in a week so we can talk through these. But in advance of that, please take a look at these, and the questions that you have then will be much more advanced. So getting that personal touch, but also getting the information that they need right from the get-go. Onboarding doesn't have to be complicated, so when you can simplify things, I'm all for that. Training at scale is a really interesting one because training is across the piece. It's not just for newbies. To do training at scale, you need to enlist your subject matter experts and bring them into the fold while also getting other people to do that translation as well. So training at scale, the way I think of it, is not trying to do one-on-one with everyone. It's actually getting the right people in the right place and usually recording that and making it available for people on demand, because you're not always going to be able to schedule things at a certain time that suits, especially for ourselves. Our headquarters is in Sydney, which is really not ideal for anywhere else in the rest of the world because we're on completely opposite end of the time zones. So it's a real challenge. Recording sessions and having them available on demand is a no-brainer. The next beast that we tackled was economic justifications. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, I mean How do you help your salespeople talk about justifying the price of something, identifying what the customer's current cost of operations are without using your solution, identifying the savings that they can make by using your solution, drafting up a return on investment calculator. The organization that I work in is B2B enterprise software. Talking numbers is really important. If our salespeople can't do it and can't do it confidently, forget about it. Very difficult for them to make a sale. So economic justifications is really important because it encompasses all those aspects. It's not just price, savings, ROI, it's all of them and how you can get people comfortable with that. So what we found was when new hires come in, they might just be able to open the door on this conversation or have it at a high level versus somebody who is very experienced or in the organization a long time. They really know this like clockwork. So the economic justification calculators, and it's an entire toolkit. It gives them the 2 or 3 resources that they need. They need a presentation, they need an Excel calculator, and they need to be able to talk the talk. So it walks them through step by step, explaining it from the start and going right through to where they're really advanced and building up their skills as a storyteller. Because we all know if a salesperson can't tell a story well, it's going to be very hard for them to make that connection with your buyers. Buyer journey stages and personas. This is really popular with marketing teams and it can be very popular with product teams. But where sometimes we don't pay as much attention is for our sales teams. And really, when you have a really good framework for the buyer journey stages, you can help your salespeople quickly navigate between one stage to the next. We know that the buyer's journey isn't always going to be linear. However, we do know that even if somebody comes through to, let's say, the 4th stage and, then they have to end up going back a stage, by having that clarification, your sales team can be equipped to flexibly move from one stage to another and present the resources and present the relevant resources to the buyers at the specific time. Because the other thing to make note of is when you think about personas, different personas usually come in at various stages. So when you're in that discovery stage, you probably don't need to think about, the CFO or some other personas might be only relevant at one stage. Avoiding all the assets and all the things to think about when you're in the discovery stage is really helpful because it'll keep your salespeople focused. And what we found when we went through the exercise was that there were 3 personas that we hadn't even considered. There was also another stage that we usually didn't think about. We just lumped it in with the other stages. We also found that what was apparent was not 1 or 2 individuals, it was the dynamic between the various personas, and also when X persona is at this stage, they might act in this way and they might be, highly enthusiastic, asking lots of questions, and your sales people are forecasting this is going really well. And then once you get to the next stage, it might change. And what's happening in the background, that's what the persona and the buyer's journey stages is helping our salespeople think about what might be going on in the wider context. And thinking about, even if a persona is acting one way to you face to face, they might act completely different in a group scenario with other personas that are there. In particular, if the personas are at a higher level in the organization than they are, and if other opinions carry more weight than theirs, it's likely that the dynamic will be different. So the buyer's journey stages and the personas really helps our salespeople get into the minds of the people that they're selling to. New tool rollout. I won't go into great detail around this. I just thought I'd bring up these 2 examples. There's always going to be new tools that your sales want you to roll out, and 1 or 2 people might be champions of them. When you're thinking about what tools to roll out and how to roll them out, be sure to think of it on a broader context and what's going to have not just bang for your buck, but also the mind share. Our organization set up a new function in one of our regions and hired 3 people at once. They hadn't hired people like this before, and they decided at that point to take a look at all of our tools and then whittle it down, and the team decided to implement 3 tools all at once. So not only were they thinking of one tool in isolation, they were thinking about how the tools work together and developing their processes into these. So if you are bringing in a new tool into your organization, don't think about it in isolation. Think of how you need to weave it into the processes that are there in place. And then also, don't be afraid to replace and remove old tools that do the same thing. You want to make your salespeople's lives easier, not more complex. And sometimes that does mean getting rid of old tools that are underutilized. Last but certainly not least, deciding on what not to take on. This is really important. If you want to keep your salespeople engaged and you want to keep your sales enablement web strong, you don't want it overloaded. You don't want to be trying to do everything and only doing it half-heartedly. In our organization, and for me in terms of taking it on, there were a lot of things that came up in the discovery in that time when I was listening to my people that they wanted, that we simply weren't in a place to deliver a good solution for that. We didn't have the skill set to do that, or it wasn't the domain of sales enablement. Actually, that was going to sit with sales operations, or it was going to sit with HR. Or, it simply wasn't a skill set that we had in the sales enablement team. So until we brought that on board, we just had to put it to one side. And that meant that what we did deliver on was of a really high quality and a high standard. So people were able to get on board with it. And we didn't do things half-heartedly. This meant that when we did have their time and we did have their attention, we were doing things really, really well, comprehensively. We were available to answer their questions. And this is the thing that I bring forward as well. As I mentioned, I'm in a different role at the moment, but moving back into sales enablement in a few weeks, which is great. But when I go back into it, I'll tackle project by project the things that we can take on and be sure to put things to one side. It was quite funny because one of the things that we desperately needed was an overhaul of our Salesforce system. But if the sales enablement function was to take that on, in our circumstance, we wouldn't have been able to do anything else. As a result, 3 other people have been hired in the organization to tackle that specifically on, because it's such a big beast. And it's really important. Obviously, if your Salesforce instance is not up to scratch, it can really hinder how your sales team do. So think very carefully about what you take on and what you don't take on. Today I spoke to you about how one of our quick wins was the 2-minute video updates. That worked really well because I'm okay getting on camera. I don't mind doing it. It's something that I could pick up and keep going. So that worked really well for us. So if you take on the likes of that tool, make sure you have somebody to keep that consistent, that keep it going. If you want it to be successful, back it up with the proper resources to keep it going. So to sum up, I hope you have really enjoyed this talk. I will be available on Slack for any questions, and apologies, this wasn't a live presentation if you like, but I am on Slack and look forward to hearing your questions there. So in summary, listen to your people, even if you don't want to know what they have to say, and even if you disagree with what they're saying. It really arms you to have the important conversations and tailor your rollout to address their needs and identify the gaps in their feedback. Central place, you can't have a sales enablement web without having a sales portal and a place for your teams to find everything they need fast. Pick out some quick wins. 2 or 3 wins can be a good thing. Might be a sales asset. It might be a video. It might be adding some fields in Salesforce. It might be a calculator. Whatever it is, pick 2 or 3 things and get them in front of your sales team as fast as you can. They will be really grateful. When it comes to the big beasts, don't underestimate them. Tackle them one at a time. And of course, can't boil the ocean, can't take on everything. So don't be afraid to say no. That's it for me. I'll chat to you on Slack. Bye.